Hey, this is my Advanced Algebra 1 live video for the day. It was supposed to be tonight at 8, but because of some conflicts coming up, I'm not going to be able to do it at 8. So probably no one's going to be watching. I'm just going to go ahead and record it and then post it to YouTube and leave it here. So for my 5th period class, y'all watch this video. Well, there's Brittany. Brittany's watching. Watch this video and then do your IELTS. And I'll go ahead and let y'all know all of your IELTS. This of course, is the last lesson for this week. And all of the IELTS are due Sunday night at midnight. Alright, so let's get started. Today we're going to be adding and subtracting radicals. Yes, not yesterday. Was it yesterday? I've lost all track of time. Our last lesson was multiplying radicals. And today we're going to be adding and subtracting. And these are going to be much easier. Hang on, let me get my computer set up so I can look and see comments. Lesson was multiplying radical. Okay. Alright, so we're going to do a review just to make sure that you understand our previous lessons. We are going to simplify the square root of 75, and then after that the square root of x to the 5th, to review our first lesson on radicals. So let's do those. The square root of 75. Remember, whenever you are simplifying a radical, you've got to bring out any perfect squares that divide evenly into that number. So 75 can be factored as 25 times 3, because 25 is a perfect square. You take the square root of 25, which is 5, so that comes on the outside of the square root symbol, and your 3 stays on the inside. And then you had an IELTS lesson on that. That's 5 on the square root of 3. Next, we did the same thing except with variables, like the square root of x to the 5th. The square root of x to the 5th, remember the perfect squares for variables are when they have even exponents. If they don't have an even exponent, you have to break it down as 2 factors, and one has to have an even exponent with it. So we're going to drop the 5 down to 4, and that gives you x to the 4th times x to make x to the 5th. And then you take the square root of x to the 4th by taking the exponent and halving it, and you get x to the 2nd, and you're left with your x inside the square root. So x to the 2nd on the square root of x is the simplified form. So those were in lessons, actually I believe those were lessons 1 and 2, and I think this multiplying radicals was the 3rd lesson. So I'm going to put lesson 3 right here, and lesson 2, so it won't confuse you. Lesson 2 is the one with the variables, and lesson 3 is what we did Monday when you multiplied. So we're going to multiply the square root of 15 times the square root of 6. Remember, you just multiply those two numbers together and you get the square root of 90. And then you have to simplify the square root of 90. And the perfect square factor that goes into 90 is 9. So I'm going to factor that as 9 times 10. And then you take the square root of 9, which is 3. Sounds like Texas Chainsaw Massacres at my house. And you get 3 on the square root of 10. So that's just a little review, a little quick review to make sure that you're getting all your problems correctly on iExcel for the ones we've already done. Hey, Cadence. I don't think it's freezing here. Maybe you should leave and try coming back in. And then if it just doesn't work, come back and watch it, or watch it on YouTube. Let's see. My dog is about to start barking, so I'm sorry. Maybe she'll go in there. Okay. So today, what we're going to be doing today is adding and subtracting. We're going to add and subtract radicals. And this is a very important rule right here. It says radicals must have the same exact thing under the square root symbol to be able to add or subtract. So when you multiply, you don't have to have the same numbers under there, or the same variables. But when you add, you do. So if you look at these two problems, I wrote two problems down. And on this problem, 2 on the square root of 7 plus 3 on the square root of 7, see how the numbers match under the radical? So you can simplify those. And when you simplify them, all you do is add the 2 and the 3 that's in front of each radical. It's kind of like adding 2x plus 3x, which is 5x. If you add 2 square roots of 7 plus 3 square roots of 7, you get 5 square roots of 7. But on this problem here, I've got no written beside it because those numbers under the square root symbol don't match. So you can't add those or subtract them. You can't simplify that. So if you get one like this on iExcel that the numbers don't match and you can't do anything, I think the directions will tell you just to recopy the problem in the blank to submit. So that kind, you cannot add or subtract. Alright, so we're going to do example 1. Okay, I just saw your comment. Yes, I will slow down. But we haven't really done any new problems yet, Brittany. I was just reviewing. But if you're trying to copy this, I can see why I need to slow down. So let me back up and just emphasize that what we're doing today is adding and subtracting radicals. In order to add or subtract radicals, you must have the same exact thing under the square root symbol. And so I showed two problems involving adding radicals. This first one you can work because you have a 7 under the square root. On both of them, they match. On this problem, you can't add those because you have two different numbers under the square root. So you can't simplify that problem. Now back up here on these, if this is what you needed me to slow down on, that's just a little review in case you're having some trouble on those. So go back and look back at that if you need to. If you're still having trouble on lessons 1, 2, and 3, I can help you individually on a Skype video call or on Teams sometime this weekend maybe. Or tomorrow. I'm going to be calling everybody, by the way, tomorrow and on a video call. And then let me know if you need help with any particular thing. Alright, so you ready to move on? Okay, example 1. All of these, if you look at all of these parts, A, B, C, and D, these problems all have the same number in the square root. That, remember, has to be the case to be able to add or subtract these. And once they are the same, then this lesson is super, super easy. All you do is either add or subtract the numbers in front of the square root. So here we're just going to do 6 minus 14. And 6 minus 14 is negative 8. And then you just write your square root of 2 down. Okay, all we did was 6 minus 14 and put negative 8. So you get negative 8 on the square root of 2. Oh no, it's growing blurry. Is that clear again? Can y'all see that okay? I think it's clear again. I'm looking to see if it's clear. Is it clear for you? Okay, you said yes. Alright, so on part B, we've got negative 30 on the square root of 5 minus 9 on the square root of 5. Again, these numbers under the square root match, so you just have to work with the numbers on the outside. Negative 30 minus 9 is negative 39. And then you just put your square root of 5 down. Remember, you add the numbers because they're both negative. And that is your answer, negative 39 on the square root of 5. Isn't that easy? Easy, easy. Now, on this next problem, negative 15 on the square root of 6 plus the square root of 6. If you don't have a number in front of your square root symbol, it's understood to be a 1. So this is negative 15 plus 1, which is negative 14 on the square root of 6. All right, so let's move to the last one on this example. Again, we have a square root that does not have a number in front, so that's understood to have a 1. So we have 1 on the square root of 14 plus 8 on the square root of 14, which just makes 9 on the square root of 14. Honey didn't like that problem. 1 plus 8 is 9. So all of these are easy, easy, easy. And the only other problems that we're going to do that are going to be any more difficult than this will be something that you have to simplify first and then add or subtract it. But the new stuff, the adding and subtracting, is really easy. All right, so let's go on to example 2. Let me make sure that's in view so you can see it. Now, if you look at example 2, you have negative 4 on the square root of 5 plus 2 on the square root of 45. Those numbers don't match. However, 45 can be simplified. So you can't just say that you're not going to be able to simplify this, because you might be able to once you simplify 45. So on every square root problem you need to simplify it before you decide if you can add them or subtract them. 45, remember, is going to have a perfect square of 9 in it. So we're going to factor 45 as 9 times 5. I'm going to rewrite the problem, though. Negative 4 on the square root of 5 plus 2, and then stop there, because after your 2, you're going to have to multiply by whatever you bring out from this 45. So we're going to make a square root, and I'm going to show that I'm factoring it as 9 times 5. Take the square root of 9, which comes out as 3. So you're going to have negative 4 on the square root of 5 plus 2 times 3 on the square root of 5. So we took the square root of 9, it came out as a 3, and now we've got to multiply 3 times 2. So you get negative 4 on the square root of 5 plus 6 on the square root of 5. And now you just add the numbers in front. Negative 4 plus 6. You subtract those actually and get 2 on the square root of 5. And that's your answer. All right, next. Example 3. Negative 18 on the square root of 2 minus 4 on the square root of 8. So again, this 8 can have, it has a number that is a perfect square that will divide into it. 4 divides into it. So we're going to have to simplify that. So we have negative 18 on the square root of 2 minus 4 times, and then I'm going to factor my 8 as 4 times 2. Then you need to take the square root of this 4. But first I'm going to recopy the rest of the problem. Negative 18 on the square root of 2 minus 4 times, and then you take the square root of 4 out of the square root as a 2. And then you're left with a 2 on the inside. So now you have negative 18 on the square root of 2 minus 8 on the square root of 2. Okay, so now the numbers under the square root match. So you just add negative 18 and negative 8, and you get negative 26 on the square root of 2. All right. Moving on. On this one, I believe I'm going to give you just a minute. And I know there's probably nobody watching right now. I think everybody left. Brittany may still be here. But hopefully you'll be watching this eventually. So I'm going to give you just a second and see if you could work this one. And while you work it, I'm going to be working it. But don't look at the video. I want you to write this down on your paper and see if you can work it and get the right answer, and then check it with mine. So I'm going to work it now and not talk while you're working it at your paper. Good, Brittany. I'm glad you got it. Now, for those of you that did not get it, I'm going to go back and talk through it for just a second. So we've got this 80 that has to be simplified. So we have 7 on the square root of 5 minus 8 on the square root, and then I changed 80 to 16 times 5. Now, the reason I chose 16 is you have to choose the largest perfect square that will divide into 80. 4 also divides into 80, but 4 is not the largest, 16 is. Then you take the square root of 16, which comes out of the radical as 4. You have to multiply 4 times 8 to get 32. And now both of the radicals have a 5 underneath, and so you just subtract 7 minus 32, and that's negative 25 on the square root of 5. And now we have our last one. And this one I made just a little bit harder. The numbers inside the radical are just bigger. That's what it is. And so it's not quite as easy to simplify when the numbers are larger. On this one, you have negative 10 in front of the square root. And I'm going to factor 140. Remember, one of the factors has to be a perfect square. So I'm going to go through this again. Remember the perfect squares, and what you want to do is just divide that 140 by the largest perfect square that you think will go into it. So let's think of the perfect squares. I'm going to start with maybe, we know 100 won't go into 140. 140 can't be divided by 81. If you don't know that, just do divided by 81. Move down to 64. So let's divide 140 by 64. It does not go evenly. So divide 140 by 49. That doesn't go evenly. So divide 140 by 36. That doesn't go evenly. Divide 140 by 16. I skipped 25, didn't I? I'll have to go back and do that one. 140 divided by 25. It doesn't go evenly. If you move on down, 140 divided by 9. That doesn't go evenly. So let's look and see. I think 4 is going to be the highest one. Uh-oh, I got an error. What did I do? 140 divided by 4 is 35. So that means 4 times 35 are the factors of 140. That has a perfect square as one of the factors. So now I'm going to make that negative 10 times the square root of 4, which is 2. And you're left with your 35 under the square root. And now we've got to go through the same thing with the 315. But I'll tell you a secret. Most likely, when you factor 315, one of the factors is going to be 35 because these are going to all match on your IXL lesson. So what I would do is divide 315 by 35, and I bet you'll have your perfect square factor then. So 315 divided by 35 is, guess what? 9. So we are going to make 315 9 times 35. Now take the square root of 9. There's not a number in front here to multiply by, so all we have to do is take the square root of 9, which is 3, and bring it on the outside. And then you've got your 35 left on the inside. Alright, so we've got negative 20 on the square root of 35 minus 5, which makes negative 23 on the square root of 35. And that's it. Did you understand it, Brittany? Alright, so as you can see, your IXL assignment, make sure you're under Algebra 1. Make sure you do lesson EE5. And you need a SMART score of 80. Lesson EE5, SMART score of 80. Algebra 1. Oh, it looks like I just went blurry. You heard me though, right? And I think it was on the video before now. I think everything was clear until just now. So if you can't see the assignment, look back at the video because it's been on that page the whole time. I'll say it one more time. Algebra 1, EE5, SMART score of 80. All of your IXL lessons need to be completed by Sunday at midnight. Y'all take care. See you, or I will actually see you in a video call tomorrow. Bye.